All right, you guys, today I'm going to review a little bit of Algebra 1 stuff. I know a lot of you took Algebra 1 a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure it was on Zoom, which means maybe you were watching Netflix the whole time, right? So here's what you were supposed to learn and need to remember from Algebra 1. So you can pause the video again and copy some of this stuff down if I go too fast, but in order to solve linear equations in Algebra 1, we have to do what's called performing the inverse, which means opposite operation. So in the equation, if, for example, I'm adding 10, the inverse of that is subtracting 10. And I have a couple more inverses here that you can copy down if you need to. The opposite of divide by 6 is multiply by 6. I have a couple examples here where it doesn't want you to actually solve the problems, but just identify what the inverse or opposite operation is. So find your x. And what's being done to x is plus 13. The opposite of that, or inverse, is minus 13. Here's the x in this equation. It's being divided by 7. What is the inverse of divide by 7? Multiply by 7. And I've kind of worked my way through. Here's the x, and it's being multiplied by negative 3. This is being multiplied together, hence the fact that it's negative 3x. There's no plus sign in the middle of that. The opposite of multiplying by negative 3 is dividing by negative 3. I have two different inverse operations for these two. These are two-step equations. Here's my x, and I'm going to do the easier thing first, which would be to add 7. So I'm going to get rid of this negative 7 here by adding 7. And then after that, the negative 2 is being multiplied by the x. The opposite of that is dividing by negative 2. Similarly here, now the x is right here, which sometimes we're used to seeing the x first, so don't let that confuse you, but I have a positive 9 hanging out right here, and the easiest thing to do first would be to subtract that 9 away. And then after that, I have this x that's being multiplied by a negative 5. The opposite of multiply by negative 5 is divide by negative 5. So let me go through a couple of these examples where we're just going to solve for x. And then we'll do some practice in class, and I'll be able to help and answer whatever questions you have. So here's the x. It's being multiplied by 3 and subtracting 2. The easiest thing to do first would be to start with the whole number that is not with the x. So I'm going to start with this negative 2, and the opposite of negative 2 is plus 2. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. That cancels, and I'm left with 3x. Bring your equal sign down, and I'm going to add here 7 plus 2 equals 9. Now I have one more step. Here's my x. It's being multiplied by 3. What's the opposite of multiply by 3? Divide by 3. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to both. That cancels. I'm left with x on the left-hand side, which means I'm almost finished. And again, 9 divided by 3 is 3. There's my answer. I'm going to go to number 3. The first thing that I would recommend doing here is, I know everybody is probably going to want to distribute like this. Whenever I see a whole number like this outside a set of parentheses, I always want to distribute. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. When I take 5 times 2x, this is what we practiced yesterday, you get 10x. Keep the plus sign, and when you take 5 times 4, you get 20. And I'm keeping everything else in the equation the exact same. Now here's my x. And it's being multiplied by 10 and adding 20. The simplest thing to do first would be to get rid of this 20, this whole number that's all by itself that doesn't have an x with it. The opposite of plus 20 is minus 20. So I'm going to do that to both sides. Why did I not do it over here? Because this is all the same side of the equation. Here's my equal bar. I'm going to subtract 20, which is going to combine with this number. And I'm going to subtract 20 on the other side of the equal sign as well. That cancels those, and I'm just going to bring down my 10x. I'm just bringing down this here. Keep your equal sign, and 40 minus 20 is 20. I only have one step left. 10 is being multiplied by x. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Those 10s cancel, and I'm just left with x on this side, and 20 divided by 10 is 2, and there's my answer. Let's do one more. Number 5, pretty similar. What I'm going to do here, again, I'm going to distribute my 6. Whenever I see a whole number with parentheses, that's my first thing that I always want to do. So I'm going to take 6 times x, and I get 6x. Keep the plus sign. When you do 6 times 2, you get 12. And keep the equals 5 on the other side. Now here's my x. I'm going to start with this whole number right here. The opposite of plus 12 is minus 12. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. Those 12s cancel. And now I still have 6x on this side. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. And when I do 5 minus 12, I get negative 7. And now the x is being multiplied by 6. The opposite of multiply is divide. So divide by 6 on both sides. And this gives me just x on the left. And this fraction, 7 over 6, is kind of ugly. It doesn't reduce. It's okay to just leave your answer like that. Next, I want to move down to this fraction part. What about fractions, it says? You've probably heard the vocab word in math before, the reciprocal. There's a teacher once that taught me refliprical, because it kind of sounds like that. Here's a couple examples for you. 2/3 and 3 over 2, you just flip the fraction. Be careful with a 1 though. 1/7, when you flip it, you get 7 over 1, which is the same thing as just 7. So just be careful with those, but that's what I'm talking about when I mean reciprocal. So whenever you see a fraction, you're going to be multiplying by the reciprocal in order to solve the equation. Here's number 11. Here's my x, and here's my whole number on the same side as the x. I'm going to start there because the easiest thing to do would be to subtract 3 from both sides of the equation. Remember, this is all one side of the equation. Here's the other side. The equal sign in the middle is what divides it. So that cancels that 3, and that's a good thing. I'm going to bring down my 1/2 x, and when I do 13 minus 3, I get 10. Now here's what I'm talking about multiplying by the reciprocal. The opposite of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1. And I'm going to do that on each side of the equation. When you take 2 over 1 times 1 over 2, that cancels. That's what the reciprocal does, and that's why it's awesome. So all I have is x left on the left side. On this side, I'm going to take 10 times 2. 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. This 1 really doesn't affect our math in this case. So 10 times 2 is 20. Let's do one more. Here is 4/5 x minus 11. Here's my whole number. The easiest thing to do here would be to get rid of that 11 first. So I'm going to add 11 to both sides. That cancels here. And I'm going to bring down my 4/5 x, keep the equal sign. And now I just have to combine 5 plus 11. That gives me 16. And here again, I have a fraction, so I need to multiply by the refliprical, if you will. The opposite, or the reciprocal of 4/5 is 5 over 4, and I need to do that on both sides. That's what cancels this, which is awesome. That's why we have reciprocals. I just have x on this side. And now 16 times 5 over 4 is a little bit hard. You can take your calculator and take 16 times 5 and then just divide it by 4. When you do that, you get 20. I'm going to pause there, you guys. Let's do a couple more in class and ask a bunch of questions, okay? Thanks for watching.